Are you excited for the White House card? That looks really good.
Yes. I'm excited. It sounds crazy. I know it's going to be very high security and high stress and weird to have a fight at the White House in the middle of a fucking war. But I would hope the war will be sorted out by June, but quite honestly, I'm not confident that that's going to be the case.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so that would be weird.
Yeah.
Having this very high-profile event where everybody's in one place at one time right there.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
So you're not excited to be
Well,
there?
that seems like
Yeah.
seems like you're asking for.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that at all.
How could you not think of that?
Well, because
Literally
I'm
at
not
the
going to
White
be
House.
there. You're the one that has to think of it. Me.
He's a once-in-a-generation talent. He knocked out in 3 fights 3 all-time greats. Volkanovski, then he knocks out Max Holloway, and then he knocks out Charles Oliveira. Like, who knocks out Charles Oliveira in the first round like that? He can take it, too. When he was competing at featherweight, he took a fight at lightweight against Jai Herbert. Jai Herbert, in the first round, caught him with a perfect head kick, dropped him, and then the second round, Ilia just put him into the shadow realm.
Is he good at grappling as well?
He's phenomenal at grappling.
Really?
That's his main base.
I didn't even know that. Because you don't see that much nowadays. He just knocks everyone out.
He's been spooked.
Main event, yeah, they are. Justin Gaethje's going to lose to Ilia Topuria in the main event in the White House. If he pulls it off, it'll be cinema, okay? And I'll assume that the rig is in. And Topuria has been paid $10 million to make the US look good on the world stage. Because Gaethje, he's the All-American. He's red, white, he bleeds red, white, and blue, brother. You know what I mean? He's going to be there. He's the only American that's even in conversations to ever be in a title fight. Unless they did Yan O'Malley too. Which people would still complain about, by the way. But it's the only other way they could have a US fighter in a title fight. Jones was never coming back. But Topuria Gaethje's a sick fight. Amazing fight. Love it. I think it's great as the main event of this White House card. But we could have done with a stronger undercard.
Topuria. And Ilia Topuria is one of the absolute best fighters in the world. He's the current UFC featherweight champion. The dude is just phenomenal. But when you, one of the things that's phenomenal about him is his technique. His technique is
main event. Ilia Topuria, one of the most sensational champions we've ever seen inside the octagon, facing Justin Gaethje, which I think is the absolute perfect matchup for him. Justin deserves it after the Paddy Pimblett fight. Ilia Topuria has been just a complete and total phenom. And
2 title fights. It was not the 7 to 8 title fights as was initially promised. It's a marquee main event. I know that there are some people who are upset. I know that there are some people who are trying to say like, hey, this is a letdown. This is an incredible 6-fight card. And it was never going to be 7 to 8 title fights. That was never going to happen. That would screw up the rest of their schedule. Ilia Topuria coming back against Justin Gaethje is a massive, massive fight. It is a marquee fight. It is one of the biggest fights of the year. Topuria coming back after everything he's been through, almost exactly a year between fights, is a very big deal.
The UFC has confirmed the full lineup for the White House card, and one matchup immediately took over every conversation in combat sports. Ilia Topuria will defend his lightweight title against interim champion Justin Gaethje in a title unification fight on the South Lawn of the White House on June 14th. From the second that announcement landed, the spotlight snapped to these two fighters and did not move. Fans reacted, analysts jumped in, fighters across the sport locked onto the same subject, because this is the kind of pairing that can carry an entire event by itself without needing anything else on the card to justify the production costs. Topuria did not sit around letting the moment breathe. Almost as soon as the booking was confirmed, he was posting training footage from camp, and that instantly changed the energy around the fight from a future scheduling discussion into something that felt active, underway, and operating at a higher gear. One man is one of the cleanest and most dangerous finishers in the sport. He knocked out Volkanovski, knocked out Max Holloway, knocked out Charles Oliveira in the first round, which is a sequence of victims that reads like a Hall of Fame highlight reel assembled in the span of a single championship run. The other is one of the most aggressive and fearless action fighters MMA has ever produced, a man from a small Arizona copper mining town who bleeds forward pressure, who has made a career out of refusing to fight at a comfortable distance, who thrives in the violent exchanges most fighters specifically train to avoid. Put those two together on a stage carrying this much historical and political weight with a title on the line, and every part of it feels loaded. Every piece of it feels dangerous, and that is exactly why this matchup grabbed the sport immediately and has not released its grip since the announcement. The first training footage from Topuria's camp told a story that did not require any words to communicate. He looks sharp, settled, and completely focused. The striking sequences tight, the footwork clean, the sparring measured with an obvious emphasis on timing in reactions, rather than the kind of gym wars that produce highlight clips and mean nothing once the cage door shuts. What stands out most in the footage is the discipline running through everything he is doing. This does not look like a fighter trying to win social media approval by showing off volume or intensity. It looks like a champion refining specific small details before camp gets even harder. His movement has purpose behind it. His reads look quick, and the whole setup gives off the feeling of someone who understands exactly what challenge is in front of them and is building toward it with the patience of a fighter who knows that the preparation that matters is not the preparation people see. That approach carries specific significance against Justin Gaethje, because Gaethje is the kind of opponent who can drag anyone into chaos the moment they lose their structural discipline for even a single exchange. A fighter who does not need opportunities handed to him, he manufactures them through relentless forward pressure and the willingness to absorb punishment in the process of delivering it. A training camp built around control, spacing, and precision is not accidental preparation for this specific fight. It is the deliberate construction of the tools required to stay one step ahead of someone whose entire competitive identity is built on making staying ahead as difficult as possible. There is no rush in what Topuria is doing, no wasted motion, no sign that he is forcing the preparation toward any artificial timeline. He looks like a fighter who wants every exchange in the cage to happen on his terms, and that mindset alone has made analysts believe he is entering this fight with the composure required to manage the pressure Gaethje will bring from the opening bell. Dana White has not been subtle about how he views this matchup. Topuria versus Gaethje is not just another title fight placed on a major event. It is the right main event for a night carrying the kind of historical weight that the White House setting imposes on everything scheduled beneath it. He has spoken very highly of Topuria specifically, describing him as one of the most impressive champions on the roster and one of the standout names in the sport at this point in his career, the kind of language that reflects how the organization actually views a fighter rather than promotional talk designed to sell tickets. White pointed to Gaethje's most recent performance as the explicit reason he earned this shot, the implication being that Gaethje had done enough in his most recent outing to make bypassing him for a different opponent impossible to justify, regardless of what other options were available for the top of the card. The UFC clearly needed something with enough weight to give the White House card a true center once earlier negotiations for other headline matchups hit problems and stalled. An event of this historical significance cannot afford to feel unfinished at the top, and the clock became a real factor in that decision. Ariel Helwani has framed it this way: Once the earlier conversations fell apart, a unification fight between Ilia Topuria and Justin Gaethje was not just another option sitting on a table of alternatives. It became the move that gave the event fresh energy and a headline fans could immediately lock into without needing any additional context. Without a real centerpiece, the White House show would have been open to continuous criticism about what it was missing, and Topuria versus Gaethje answered that problem by bringing the belt, the style contrast, and the kind of danger that people understand the second they hear the names placed next to each other. The criticism that the White House card is a letdown because it does not feature the volume of title fights that early speculation suggested exists entirely in the gap between what the event actually became and what fans invented in their heads during the months of rumor and speculation before the card was finalized. Helwani's argument on this point is specific and difficult to dispute. A card should be judged for what it actually is, not for a fantasy version that people built from early rumors and then convinced themselves was the realistic expectation when it was never a realistic expectation under any circumstances. A major event does not need title fights stacked from the first fight to the last to feel important. It needs a strong identity, a clear centerpiece, and a main event dangerous and meaningful enough to carry the entire show. And Topuria versus Gaethje provides all three of those things simultaneously. 7 or 8 title fights was never going to happen on a single card without destroying the rest of the promotion's competitive schedule for the months surrounding the event. The logistics of aligning that many championship matchups simultaneously while maintaining the quality of the supporting card are not achievable without significant trade-offs that the organization was never going to accept. Once fan imagination pushed the expectation bar to a place no real event was ever going to reach, even a powerful main event was going to be received with unfair criticism because people were no longer reacting to the actual card. They were reacting to the one they invented for themselves and then treated as the baseline. That gap creates disappointment that has nothing to do with the finished product's actual quality, which is why Helwani's position is that the negative reaction from a portion of the fan base is the result of inflated expectations rather than evidence that the UFC delivered something insufficient.
The conspiracy theory that has been circulating in certain corners of the MMA community that the UFC would never allow Justin Gaethje to lose if he were the American headliner at a White House main event has been dismissed by most serious analysts as fan-created noise, rather than anything based on what actually determines fights. MMA Guru's position on this is straightforward. If this matchup plays out according to current form, Topuria should be favored for real fight-based reasons that have nothing to do with the venue or the political symbolism attached to the event. Topuria is younger, he's right in the middle of his athletic prime, and he carries true one-shot knockout power, the kind of finishing ability that requires Gaethje to respect the threat every single second he's in front of it, because one positional error or one moment of defensive lapse can end the fight immediately, regardless of what the scorecards show at that point. The conspiracy framing also ignores the specific quality of Topuria's championship run. 3 consecutive first-round knockouts of all-time greats in a division that he did not even begin his career competing in, which is a level of finishing across elite competition that suggests the power and timing are real rather than manufactured by favorable matchmaking. Gaethje's danger is equally real, and Guru acknowledges it clearly. Justin moves forward, trades at close range, and is comfortable in violent exchanges that most fighters specifically train to avoid entering, which means the threat runs in both directions, and the fight carries the specific kind of tension that comes when both men have the power to end things in a flash. When you look at age, timing, momentum in the division, and finishing ability, the reasons most serious analysts are leaning toward Topuria become clear. Not because Gaethje cannot win, but because the edge in those specific categories belongs to the champion. And in a fight between 2 finishers, those categories tend to determine outcomes. Justin Gaethje's approach to this camp reflects the competitive identity that has defined his entire career. Once the fight became official, he had no desire to take a long pause, reset slowly, or ease his way back into preparation. He wanted to roll straight from one camp into the next and keep the rhythm moving. That tells you something specific about how he is experiencing this opportunity. not as a fight he needs time to psych himself up for, but as an event he was already prepared to pursue aggressively the moment the booking became real and the date was set. For Gaethje, this fight carries meaning that extends well beyond what happens when the cage door closes and the bell rings. He has spoken about his roots in a small Arizona copper mining town, his family's background, and the pride he feels in representing where he comes from on every stage he has ever competed on. Putting all of that onto the White House lawn gives the moment a completely different kind of emotional weight than even the biggest previous events in his career. This is not just another major date on the UFC calendar. It is a once-in-a-lifetime stage that connects his personal story to a historical setting in a way that no other booking could have produced. This fight is about bringing his hometown, his family history, and the road that built him into a setting that no fighter has ever competed on before. The title matters, the belt matters, the championship unification matters, but the meaning goes beyond any of that for a man who has always competed with his identity attached to where he comes from and who put him there. Gaethje has a chance to represent his background and his country on a stage that will be remembered regardless of who wins or loses, and that gives this fight an emotional layer that neither Topuria's dominance nor the championship stakes can diminish, because Gaethje is not walking into the White House as just another fighter competing for a belt. He is walking in as someone for whom this specific moment carries everything.
The stylistic collision at the center of this fight is what gives it the quality of a matchup that serious fans can analyze endlessly without exhausting the interesting questions, because both men represent genuine championship-level excellence that expresses itself through completely different competitive identities. Topuria's path to the lightweight title required him to step up from featherweight and demonstrate that his power, timing, and technique were not products of weight class, and the first-round knockout of Charles Oliveira specifically settled that question in the most decisive way available in combat sports. Who knocks out Charles Oliveira in the first round? That question gets asked because Oliveira's chin, his grappling recovery, and his ability to survive early danger and come back to win fights is one of the most documented qualities in the division, and the answer to it is Ilia Topuria, which tells you something about the specific level of finishing threat this champion carries. The grappling dimension that sometimes gets overlooked because of how Topuria's finishes look on tape is the element that makes his striking dangerous in a different way than pure boxing. His grappling base creates the threat of takedowns and control that opponents have to factor into their defensive calculations, which opens the striking precisely because the grappling is real. Against Gaethje, who has built his entire career on the willingness to stand and trade in exchanges that could go either way at any moment, the question of whether Justin's discipline can prevent him from walking into the specific kind of danger that Topuria's timing and power represent is the fight within the fight. Gaethje's ability to stay composed, choose his moments, and avoid the errors that Topuria's pressure is specifically designed to create may turn into the most important storyline of the entire White House card, because if he solves that problem, he has a path, and if he cannot, the finishing ability on the other side of the cage is more than sufficient to end the night early. The White House setting is doing something to this fight that no arena or stadium could replicate. It is imposing a specific kind of historical significance on every aspect of the build-up that makes the competitive stakes feel inseparable from the cultural stakes. The sport going from being banned in multiple states, from being dismissed by serious legislators and mainstream sports media as violent spectacle rather than legitimate athletic competition, to hosting a championship fight card on the lawn of the most famous political residents in the world, that arc is the context that veteran analysts keep returning to, because the distance between the 2 points is genuinely remarkable. For Topuria specifically, a Georgian fighter who built his championship run through the featherweight and lightweight divisions of an American organization, competing at the White House carries a symbolic dimension that the typical international fight venue does not produce. A champion from outside the United States defending a title on American soil at the most symbolically American location available. For Gaethje, born and raised in a small Arizona copper mining town, trained to fight in the traditions of the American MMA system, representing the only realistic path to having an American fighter in a title fight at this specific event, the hometown dimension of what he is walking into is not something that needs to be artificially constructed for promotional purposes. It is simply true.
The combination of those two stories, intersecting at a White House card with championship stakes and the specific style contrast that guarantees the fight will not be quiet or tactical or decided on the judges' scorecards, that is the specific formula that makes people in the sport refer to certain matchups as the ones that define an entire event. Topuria versus Gaethje on June 14th on the South Lawn of the White House is exactly that matchup for exactly that event, not because the UFC needed it to be after other options fell through, but because the specific things both fighters bring to the cage happen to be exactly the things that the moment requires.